What's up, nerds? Welcome to our first episode of TV Talk. I'm one of your hosts, Corey Dierig, and next to me is Joey Pease.
Hello.
And Cameron Kaglick. We are going to talk about Jessica Jones. If you don't know, this is Marvel's new Netflix show based in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and kind of takes place in the same universe as Daredevil. And it's a pretty intense show. We all finished it. It's been enough time now that we can have a little mini spoiler cast, if you will. First of all, I want to know what you guys thought of the show. Joey, we'll start with you, and then we'll move to Cameron.
I liked it all around. I mean, I really didn't have anything that I really could complain about. I really liked David Tennant as Kilgrave. I feel he did an excellent job in that role. And there's some points where I even started, feeling sorry for him.
Yeah.
Where it was just I don't know, he did a really great job at that.
Yeah.
And it was a very dark, I guess, the show all around had a very dark tone to it, whereas Daredevil had the same kind of thing to it as well. And I think that's something that needs to be done, because not all of these are, bright, happy, stories and whatnot. So it was nice to, have this be one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think David Tennant did well. He was almost at first you were scared to death of him, and then more towards the middle of the show, they started showing some things about his background, and you became more almost sympathetic towards him. You wanted to feel sympathetic for him, but then you realize what he's done, and kind of just you were like, oh my gosh, this guy needs to go away. But he's really scary. But anyways, Cameron, what'd you think about Jessica Jones?
While watching the show, I will say this much: I really loved the Daredevil show, but while watching Jessica Jones, I don't know. After watching the entire season, I still have to say I think I liked the Daredevil show just the tiniest bit more, a hair more. But I still think Jessica Jones was a better character show than Daredevil was, because Daredevil relied a good deal on action set pieces and things like that. No complaining there, but I just thought Jessica Jones had better storytelling and better character development throughout the entirety of the show. And certain comic book characters were represented very cool and very well in the show. I thought Kristen Ritter was actually really, really good as Jessica Jones. I was very surprised. I know it sounds terrible to say I'm very surprised by that, because I've only seen her in Don't Trust the Bee and Apartment 23 and Breaking Bad. That's really it. Yeah. So I haven't really seen her or anything, so I didn't have any preconceived notions going in what her acting was going to be like. But she was actually really, really fantastic as Jessica Jones, and I felt for her. She was complex, and she was interesting and unpredictable, and all that was great.
Yeah.
And David Tennant was great. I never seen him in anything. All I know is that he was in Doctor Who. That is it. I've never seen him in anything, so I didn't
You never
know
saw
what to
Harry
expect.
Potter movies?
Yeah,
I've only watched maybe the first 3. I haven't watched the rest of them after that, because I don't really give a fuck. But and then Mike Coulter was a big surprise, because I remember whenever they first announced these Netflix shows that it was supposed to be Daredevil, then it was going to be called AKA Jessica Jones, but then it was supposed to be Jessica Jones. Then there was going to be a Luke Cage show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then they just changed that and put him in Jessica Jones. So I really didn't know what to expect when it came to his character, but I loved his character, and I thought Mike Coulter looks exactly like the comic book character.
Yeah, the first time he is on screen, you're just okay, yeah, he's Luke Cage. He
looks so much like him. It's scary.
Yeah. I did like Trish, which I know in some versions of the comics, isn't it Captain Marvel? That's Jessica Jones' best friend, sidekick, or whatever. But I thought the girl that played Trish was really cool. I thought their dynamic was really cool. I also like David Tennant, though. We keep coming back to him. He is just
Daredevil did it well, and Jessica Jones did it well too.
Yeah, he's just the Marvel Netflix shows have done a great job of making a compelling villain, as well as compelling characters all around. And I think the tone they're taking with these shows is so vastly different from the way they're going with their movies, which I understand like Netflix has different like parameters that they're allowed to work within. ABC can't really take these parameters with Agents of Shield and Agent Carter and stuff. Not that those shows need to be like these, but like I like the darker tone that these are taking, and so we're gonna go into that. Like the tone of the show is dark. Like it starts out dark and gets darker all the way to the very end. It gets dark. It starts out like that very first intro to the first episode. You just see her taking pictures of the two people having sex in a car. Like I'm like, okay, this is going in a different direction than because me and my fiance are really excited for Agent Carter, and we've been like looking up stuff for Agent Carter season 2, and this is taking a different turn than that, and then it just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah, I have to say that's a big surprise. There was sex.
Oh,
there was a lot of it.
Yeah.
And it was I didn't want to say intense, I would just say
rigorous.
Extreme, breaking things and lots of bouncing.
Yeah.
Mm.
Extreme bouncing.
I seriously did
That's
not
one way to
expect
put
as
it.
much, because Daredevil didn't have like any sexual anything in it. It was all really more ultra violence, and then Jessica Jones, it's like, all right,
Yeah.
I can kind of get into that.
Oh man, but like let's see, I'm stealing your papers, Cameron.
I really liked the tone. It had this noir feel. That's whenever the music came on,
mhm.
I was really surprised at the way that they were taking, because I kind of figured that whenever they're going to go with the whole PI thing, where she's a detective and all that kind of stuff, that they might do the whole noir thing, but I didn't know how well it was going to work. But I thought it worked really well. They had like the whole noir. She's taking pictures, and she's a down on her luck private investigator, and she's a drunk and everything like that. And it was just really interesting. And then it became this really intense thriller
Mhm.
where everything was unpredictable. I really didn't know where anything was going to go at one point, and it was just some things came out of the blue. Like, well, this is all spoiler, but I have to say probably the one moment that pissed me off the most, or was really unexpected, was Simpson's character. I hate him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cop Simpson, the cop that's in the show, is kind of a
Piece of shit.
Yeah, he's
He does a lot of shit that no one is happy about, and completely screws over a few of them.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
yeah. That scene specifically where he starts taking the red pills.
Which is exactly like the comic did, which is cool.
Yeah. Where he takes the red pills, he goes and, finds where they're hiding, where they hid David Tennant's character, Kilgrave. And the cop is in there. I forget what the detective's name is, but he just whips out a gun and shoots him. Like, that scene in particular, there's so much shock value in some of these scenes, and it's just like,
Especially
I
'cause
cannot
it's
believe
not-
that just happened.
Yeah, it's not like he held the gun up and was like there, like threatening him or anything. He just walked into the scene, asked them a couple questions, whipped out a gun, shot him in the head.
Yeah.
Like,
And what, like, he handed over his first gun too,
yeah,
and then he whipped out a second one when he was done, like all within like a half a second. He was asking a question, whipped out a gun, shot him, and burned the place down within like 10 seconds. It was crazy. And then after that scene, things just keep getting darker and darker. You see the lawyer and her ex-wife fight, and then you see her hit the table and the blood gushing from her head when her head hits the table. You see Kilgrave's dad's arms cut off, and he's laying there, and you think he's dead, and then he wakes up, which is really gross. And then you see the guy that Kilgrave is controlling shoving the arm down the garbage disposal, which is really disturbing. Like, there's all these little scenes that are just really disturbing. And the fact, okay, one thing I want to point out, it has no concept in the direction that we were taking that conversation, but Kilgrave remakes Jessica Jones's childhood home.
yeah. Oh, that was creepy.
What?
He's like, he tells her I used the magnifying glass at the pictures just to make sure I got everything right.
Yeah.
It's like, how did he get like her family portraits back up perfectly like
Yeah.
that? Like,
Yeah, and like I was like, okay, he just needs a place to when the whole scene started. I was like, okay, he just needs a place to lay low, and then he mind controls the guy and buys the guy's house. I'm like, okay, whatever. Then he peels back the wallpaper, and it's like Jessica's like
yeah, her height
heights and
she was
stuff,
drawing.
and then it zooms out and shows the street names that she keeps repeating to keep him out of her head, and I'm just like, this guy's a psychopath.
That's one thing I really like that they did. They started out showing that Jessica was so unstable, but you had no really idea why. You thought she was just kind of crazy at the beginning, but then you come to find that like all these superstitions she had are like actually real, and she has complete like reason to be that superstitious about everyone and everything. Like even like her neighbor, that the druggie, he
Yeah.
was spying on her, and she had no idea the whole entire time. He was just taking pictures to Kilgrave, and it was just like everyone around her could possibly be someone who was being controlled.
Yeah,
The moment I saw that and we figured out that Malcolm was the spy on her, I thought that was genius storytelling. Because when I was first watching the show, I was just like, oh, junkie, get out of here, you're freaking everyone out. And then that happens, and I'm like, holy shit, I did not even expect anything like that to happen.
Mm-mm.
I just thought it was a dickhead junkie, falling asleep in the elevator and stuff like that. And I just thought that was genius the way they pulled that off, honestly.
Yeah, and then that whole like when she finds out, she follows him and he meets him somewhere, and then like later on in that same episode, well, they're not meeting in the same place. And then she finds out that Malcolm's talking to someone else he had compelled to tell him where he was, and like that whole thing was just like, this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Well, branching off of Malcolm, I'll say this much. That's one thing that Jessica Jones did that I might say is a little bit of a gripe that I had with the show. With Daredevil, there's maybe a few characters that I didn't care about as much, and that was just Karen Page's character, because she was kind of like an airhead, dumbass piece of shit who, whenever she did whatever she did, she didn't think about what she was doing and kind of left a trail of dead bodies behind her without even thinking about what she was doing. And then the Mexican woman who couldn't leave her apartment, and it's like, in all reality, if all this was happening, just leave.
Yeah.
But when it came to Jessica Jones, after Malcolm became clean, for some reason I kind of didn't give a shit about his character anymore. And to be honest, Jessica Jones' lawyer, the whole squabble with her and her ex-wife, after a certain point, it was like, okay, I kind of don't care anymore.
I kind of felt like that
I really don't
element
care
was
about this
forced in.
anymore. It was just really, I don't know, it just felt like filler stuff, and I really didn't give a shit about it. And after a certain point, I was like, oh, geez, can we just move on from this? Especially because her ex-wife is just like annoying as shit, but
Yeah.
whatever. That's just what the show.
I did kind of feel like that was an interesting piece of the story, but I feel like they did drag that on a little bit for filler.
I understand that it all together, having all these things here, it's important to tell a story, but certain parts with these characters, I really just didn't care anymore after a certain time period here.
The one character that really annoyed me too was the sister upstairs.
Yeah,
Oh,
that was
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
ridiculous. After a certain point, I'm like, jeez Louise, this
Yeah.
is
She
too
was-
much.
I mean, I understand it was the fact that, we saw when her brother got killed how he did, and like that whole effect that added to the show, but then it was like, I don't know, they overplayed her a little bit too much. It was like you could have had those little parts where it showed her, being obsessed with finding her brother, but you didn't have to have like the whole kind of story to it. And they could have just told her more from the beginning, and I kind of felt like they would have, but then they didn't because they felt bad for her, I guess. But I don't know.
Yeah, I just her whole dynamic with the brother was really weird. Like, it kind of made me feel uncomfortable, to be quite honest. But like, I did feel bad for what was his name, Ruben.
Yeah.
At that moment when Jessica came home from what she was like, what, really drunk, I think was the episode, and she laid down in the pile of blood, not realizing it, and then the camera panned over, and he was laying there with his neck slit. Like, that was a real shock value point.
That was horrific.
Yeah. And then that leads us into like the police department scene
Oh,
where
yeah.
he held all of them hostage with
She
mind
brings
control.
in the head,
Yeah.
and just drops it on the table, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, that whole like event was kind of disturbing. And then Kilgrave ended up coming in, and like all the cops were holding guns to each other's heads, and then afterwards they all laughed about it because he told them to. Like,
He
that
said,
was-
"Yeah, this is just a joke. All of you will find it hilarious in 10 seconds or whatever."
yeah.
I wonder if someone actually ate their phone though, because that was one of the things he said was, "Next person's phone who rings, eat your phone."
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
so I was
Yeah.
like, if no one's phone rang, does that still happen later on, or is that?
Which I'm gonna say that I really liked the way they did Kilgrave, the Purple Man, his mind control. Because to be honest, whenever I see it in a lot of other movies, they always do the whole someone will put a finger on their head or
Yeah.
look at somebody and a bunch of sound effects, wow, 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 or something like that.
Something ridiculous.
I liked it a lot better in this, where it's like he just seriously spoke at somebody and they did it. I thought that was really cool. The entirety of the show, the way they did that. I
Yeah.
thought that was well handled.
It wasn't cheesy. It was really like commanding. Like, he commanded a presence when he did that. It wasn't like Professor X in the X-Men movies, but
Yeah.
like,
Which I do love it, but at times it's like, I don't know, if you like got super drunk and watch it from the outside looking in, it looks kind of funny sometimes.
yeah. One thing I do want to pick and talk about before we wrap this up, the Hope, that whole character development, like that's how the show starts. Is that Hope kills her parents, and that's why Jessica Jones is on this thing to find
Yeah.
Kilgrave, and then like what, episode 10 or 11, she ends up killing herself, so Jessica doesn't have to worry about her anymore. Like, that whole thing was like that was surprising when she broke the glass and just stabbed herself. Like, that
Yeah.
was like all these quick hit moments that are just like shock value moments. Like, you just
I didn't expect that at all.
I didn't either. It was like, and like the one thing though, like then you could see the blood squirt out of her neck, which was like really kind of disturbing. But because me and Cameron have had this talk a couple times, I don't do blood well,
Yeah.
but
See, I'm not so squeamish. I can watch horrific violence and be okay with it. So none of this really, like, I was surprised, but nothing was like making me want to throw up or anything. So I thought I was okay.
See, blood doesn't bother me as much as when someone actually gets like
Sliced
sliced open and you see that stuff, and then that's where I start getting a little squeamish.
yeah.
Never like gag or like almost throw up, just enough to where I'm uncomfortable and
Yeah.
don't want to see that.
Yeah, that's where I'm with you. But like, even like a lot of blood is kind of like, it makes me uncomfortable. But
One more thing I wanted to touch up before we actually wrap up was I really loved Jessica and Luke's relationship.
I did too.
I thought it was really well handled, and it wasn't like forced where it's like Thor and Jane from the Thor movies, where it's like, okay, yeah, they definitely don't feel like they are even.
Their
There's
chemistry
no
was-
chemistry there. It feels forced and stupid. But with these two, it's like it was developed, and they had a reason why they like had such a connection with each other, and it felt legitimate and it felt great, and it didn't feel forced at all. And I feel like if later on in season 2 or something like that, if they were to shack up again, I would really want to see more of that, because I really liked their relationship, and I thought it was very cool seeing them and very believable, and it was awesome seeing them work together. I liked that a lot. So that episode, whenever you figure out that Kilgrave kind of had this hold on him for a while, and then he turns and starts fighting her, I was like,
yeah.
Yeah,
the
that was.
bastard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this up? Final thoughts on Jessica Jones?
Great. Definitely recommend it for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. But if you're
Yeah.
watching this, we might have just ruined everything. So
Yeah. Well, there'll be a spoiler warning in the title for
Right.
sure. But
I would definitely recommend it too. I think seriously, Marvel's Netflix stuff is
Even-
the only thing to look forward to nowadays.
even if you're not a fan of like superhero stuff, this isn't a superhero show. and I would really recommend it to everyone, even if you're not interested in what's going on in the overall Marvel universe or like superheroes at all. Definitely recommend this for sure. It's one of the best shows I've watched in a long time.
I mean, yeah, there's like superpowers and stuff in it, but that's never the focus.
Yeah, that's never the focus. But thank you for watching our first episode of TV Talk. You can find all of our content on digitalnerdadvocates.com and the Digital Nerd Advocates Network on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, and share this video if you liked it. If not, leave us a comment below and tell us how we can improve this show. It is kind of a work in progress, but until next time, we're out.
Bye.